Edge Conference. Educate, develop, grow, empower.
So we are going to be looking at effective content authoring and development, a comprehensive exploration. Now, I'm doing it with one of my mentees, Felix Olakulehin of the National Open University. What we're trying to do is doing different things and doing them differently, basically. Now, if you look at where we've been coming from as a nation, it is not true that we have not achieved anything, because I've been there, I was there when we started it all. There was no Web 2.0, no social media, no Google, no Facebook, no Twitter, and we were still able to do some limited level of web-based learning. So you can understand where we are coming from. So please, I think we don't need to diminish the achievement we have made so far. Because I remember when I went to the Open University of UK at some point, they said that we are trying to do in 10 years what it took them about 60 years to achieve. So I think Nigeria is not doing badly, but we just need to do things differently and do them very well. And that's why I'm happy that we have an institution like this, and the NUC has opened the space to private institutions. I've been fighting for this, and since Dr. Dedina came in, we've seen the NUC has challenged the space so that you can come up with innovation. What is missing now is the problem of collaboration and sharing. That's and then now this is my mantra for change, managing change: spacing, pacing, facing, phrasing, and bracing. So if you can't remember any of those things, you'll put XING, Xing. So basically, I'm not going to be able to explain this now, but is a fact that something for you to do things very well, you have to pay attention to that. Like I said, good intentions are not enough. All the best of intentions may not lead to the best outcome. So we need to do things very well. Now, there are 6 sites bedrock for sustainable progress. So if you are going to talk about progress, you need the 6 bedrock: insight, foresight, hindsight, oversight, keensight, and clearsight. Foresight, we don't need to talk about insight. Knowledge. So when you are talking about, you don't go to start developing course material without having the expertise. I know that we're talking about wisdom of the crowd now, and that a lot of untrained people are now experts, while the experts themselves are now public intellectuals. So we are seeing a reversal of roles, where everybody knows everything. But then, of course, the foresight, we need to have a plan, the future in mind. You have to have accurate and deep understanding. We need anticipating and predicting futures, which is what I like to do through systems dynamics. We want to be able to watch and predict where we are heading to. You can call me a prophet, but my prophecy is spelled P-R-O-F-E-T. From being a prof. It's not from religion. And then, of course, the whole business of ability to hindsight, review. Even it applies also even with go back to what you've been doing, even with the way you'll be handling the whole business of cost development of your course materials and so on. Oversight is keeping everything and maintaining a clear supervision, and then paying attention to details is very important. One of the weaknesses we have is the absence of data integrity. Data fidelity is a challenge here, and we don't even do research to support what we do. Most of what we do is opinions based. So opinion, Al Pacino says assumptions is the mother of all, you know what it means. A lot of what we do is based on assumptions. And so we need to develop a research mind. Your research has to be based. I always say that the Nigeria we are dealing with no longer exists. You see, the Nigeria we are still treating, it's like a patient whose sickness has moved to another level, yet we are still applying Panadol. So the Nigeria doesn't exist anymore. Even the parameters we use for analysis no longer exist. We have a new breed of Nigerians, and we don't even understand them. We call them youth, but their parameters is totally different in terms of the way they see the world. So Nigeria is not the Nigeria of 1960s. Then, of course, clear-sightedness, clarity, systems thinking, seeing interconnectedness, and maintaining links. So the logic has changed. That's basically what you need to know. And that we are now into the era of multidisciplinarity and teaming. And even in the terms of your course materials, your developing, your authoring, you have to know that it's no longer the silos we used to, the stuff fencing. I'm a linguist, but I'm also involved in with big data. I collaborate with people in systems engineering, in software, in developing a pidgin dictionary. You know, we had to do that. So we now have a pidgin dictionary now, and then there are tools now for writing the grammar that we will no longer need human intervention. So the fact that you are trained in a certain area doesn't mean knowledge is very fluid. So the first thing you have to do is to look at the competencies of the individuals who are involved in what you're doing. It's very clear. Sorry, I hope this is just to give us a background. Then the next thing, which I know that you already know, we will, because the presentation yesterday was very clear and very apt. So there are no more boundaries as we know them. And the whole business of knowledge taxonomies that we still draw is an illusion. And it is on the basis of those knowledge taxonomies that we still do our classifications and our approvals. My brother, bring them down. It's an illusion. Knowledge is fluid. Reality is one. What we simply have is ways of interpreting them. Some disciplines are constructing reality, others are deconstructing. Now, I want you to please do something today. Is that you have to question norms and challenge status quo. Context, asymmetries, and realities matter. The whole business of the negative effect of legacy thinking. We say, whether we talk about the theories, methodologies, and so on, all of these things are thinking frames. They are ways to help us to bring the world into manageable, you bring chaos into an order, into a pattern. So they are frames for looking at the world. So question them, especially because there are asymmetries all over. The nature of the Nigerian learner is not the same as the learner in the US. The reality of the environment is not the same as the reality in the UK. So we need to question them. So if you accept ideas without questioning them, then you are suffering from the negative effects of legacy thinking. But you don't also question without knowledge. You have to first of all understand what people are doing before you start to question them. So this is just, I have a whole lecture on these issues, and but I'm not going to. So what are the challenges? I hate it when people say the fundamental challenge we have in the system is money. Money is not our challenge. Actually, money is it's not our challenge, not our problem. So it's not money, but if you look at what is the purpose of e-learning in Nigeria? Why did you establish, sorry, you give me 1 minute. Why did you establish your distance learning operations? And maybe Akombi will be surprised by the answer. Why? Money. You want to make money for your university.
IGR.
IGR. So, Dr. Akombi, that is the primary problem. So, purpose determines behavior. You understand me? So, every other thing, if you use the rules, if you turn money to an issue, bosses become the most powerful people because they are watching money. If you change the rules also will be rules that are done not for learning but for money. So if you change the rules of what do you call it, football to basketball, you know it's a whole different ball game. So there is a whole connection between purpose, structure, processes, and behavior. They are interconnected. So the purpose will determine the structures and the processes, and even the kind of human beings you hire will no longer be determined by learning and the ability to do instructional materials. It will be determined by other factors. So if you see a university, for instance, as a resource area for Ibadan, for instance, you are not going to be hiring people, the best people for instructional designs. You won't hire an Ogbomoshoma. You will hire only Ibadan people. And then, so the whole thing changes. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Because the reason I added this, it was not there before, but I wanted you to go back because you are leaders. And then you are also the next generation of leaders. Where we are heading to is closer than where we are coming from. In another 9 years, I'll be out of the system. But you are the ones who are. I mean, I won't be there anymore. And even if there is reincarnation, I don't want to reincarnate on Earth. So please send me elsewhere. I think I've had enough experience on Earth. Now, the other thing, why do institutions not share course materials? Why? You are saying you don't have materials, you don't have good ones. I'm sure Dr. Akombi will want to support if you want to have it. Why? It's because of money. People want to print. They want to print. The first entrance to eLearning in Nigeria, if you want to know exactly, you want to know the man with the club food, they were saying, look, the load on your head is bent. Say, why is it bent? He said, look at me from the The people who started eLearning in Nigeria were basically bankers. So that was where we got it wrong. And then to computer vendors. And now we are now dealing more with academic politicians. So, and what you are trying to do here today is to refocus to the real issues. So that's basically to just draw your attention to some of these fundamental issues. I just also want you to know that authoring and course development does not exist in a vacuum. And I think you made that point. You are talking about learner characteristics, for instance. We basically don't have ideas about our learners. That's one of the big problems. We don't. I have trained on learner support. I've trained on the use of OERs. We have OERs. I did something for the Commonwealth of Learning recently on OER policy to 3 universities in Nigeria. Look, resources are there that you can adapt, but why are people still insisting on printing? Because, you know what, I don't want to say it. Now, there are economic issues, there are cultural issues, there are safety and security issues, psychological and pedagogical. You've had enough of that. I don't want to go into details. So what is effective content authoring? So that's basically one thing you need to do. It is effective because it takes into consideration every matter that has to do with the curriculum. The curriculum itself is as good as those who put it together. So it starts from the human person again, which means that no matter what investments you put into education, first of all, the quality of the person, of the people, the teachers, the instructional designers. So these are the quality, the cornerstone of effective content is quality. Yeah? Then you talk about relevance. You have to navigate your educational objectives. What are the educational objectives? You know, the funny thing about it is that there is a negative valuation of education so far, but it's changing because the younger people are beginning to see value in competence and skills. So that is changing. It's a problem with my generation. It's not a problem with the younger generation. Don't mind they say Nigerian youth are lazy. I have in fact, I have one of my students now who has just suspended his studies. Her studies, actually, she's about 22 years. She's product manager for a company. I mean, she just suspended her study to focus on that. And there are a lot of them. You won't believe it. You know? So we have to deal with the issues of relevance. We have to deal with the issue of functionality, which is fostering user engagement. Everything, we were talking about learning. The context of e-learning, of online learning, of distance learning is totally different from the face-to-face. But unfortunately, we have transferred the inefficiencies of the face-to-face to the distance environment. There are a lot of inefficiencies that are creating cost burdens. You are looking at overlaps. You are looking at the content also is fossilized. You are basically delivering content in the same kind of paradigms. Whereas you have to shift the focus from teaching to learning. And then the learner, you become the facilitator. And that's why I tell stories and use the stories also to teach. There are symbolisms in our environment. You can use collages, you can use posters, and build a whole narrative around it. And everybody is happy. People are participating. So these are some of the issues that I think I just want us to be able to say that we need to be more creative and innovative in the way we deliver content. There are some simplistic things I'm going to say here, very simplistic, but they border on the ideology of our perception of who the author is, who the content developer is. So functionality is accessibility is also very critical. We talk about accessible OERs, for instance, when you have to deal with all kinds of diversities. You have to design content with features which cater for individuals with disabilities as well. So these are some, but if you don't know those who are going to use the content, how do you know who you are designing for? So these are some of it. So you have to start with that, knowing I no longer call them just learners. Your learners are also your clients, since your focus is also, so you have to give service. So there's no better way to give service than the course materials, the modules. And then of course, let me also, because I'm trying to move a little faster, because you will have these slides, and yesterday has done a little bit of the job for me. I always like to come last. Actually, I wanted to beg Dr. Akambi to allow me to come last, but I thought he would say that this man is lazy. And I don't want my students to say that I'm lazy. You know those guys who, one of the Ibadan senators who like to stay at the back, and his people wanted to recall him. And then the man said that he had an explanation, that he's a junior senator, and that before the matters get to him, people have spoken his mind. So I would just have come here and tell you that others have spoken my mind. So, but there are also the impact on learners. There is cognitive impact. There is motivational impact. Even on the developers themselves, the joy and the passion of seeing that there are outcomes, that there is good performance. Then let me even face. You see, I'm trying to go into get to a point where, so that we can talk, we can really ask questions and debate, and if possible, even exchange some verbal. Yes, if it's possible, but because things have to change. Things have to change. That's basically the point I'm making. It has to change, and it has to change fast. Now, ideological considerations shaping perspective. Content development is not devoid of ideological consideration. And this was why I talked about the issue of legacy thinking, the issue of cultural sensitivity. That there are issues now, that people talk about pronouns now. Those are ideological issues of identity elsewhere. If you want to develop content for the global environment, there is a way you have to put your content. You must be sensitive to the global currents. If you are developing for the local environment, you will know that it is local. So if the global they don't patronize you, you know what why they don't patronize you. So there are cultural issues. You have to avoid biases and stereotypes. Anytime I listen to the news, I'm so sensitive. I can see biases. I can see stereotypes. Reading through materials, I can see that people don't even understand that they are insulting people. So these are issues. Then learning traditions and interactional dynamics are different. Learning tradition. Do you know that our learning tradition is basically cryptic? Basically, we preach. We don't teach. We don't even teach. We preach. Every classroom situation is a sermon. So when you see the educational pipelines, the students coming from the secondary school system, and they have to change to the university system, and you say you should be more conversational, you paralyze them. Because they are spoon-fed, they are force-fed, and what other kind of feeding you do again, after spoon-feeding and force-feeding? Yes. So, and so the first thing I deal with my first year students is that I find that they are frozen in class because they've come with the tradition of spoon-feeding and force-feeding and then preaching in class. So how do we deal with the issues like that in converting the teaching styles or the learning styles? How do we handle them? In terms of the interactional dynamics, you say conversational, and the people, we have a hierarchical society, a patriarchal society where people, the teacher is the king in class, is dominant. How do you minimize the effect? And that was why I said the process of change must be done deliberately and must be managed carefully in order for us not to get the right outcomes. These things are possible to do. Then, of course, the linguistic issue. It says non-culturally driven models of education lead to disenfranchising retardation, such retardative distortions of institutional dependency. Creativity, language is the basis of creativity. Now, we are suffering now today from limited English proficiency in Nigeria. It is the cycles of meanings and understanding are so wide now that it is difficult for two Nigerians to understand the same thing, speaking to each other. Now, so how do you deal with the problem of ambiguities, the problem of interpretations in your content? You say one thing, your students are understanding something different. So it's important for communication, short, direct, to the point communication, so that people can get what you are saying. Sometimes it's not your problem, but you have to try to. Then, of course, the issue of ethical standards, which you and I know that there are ethical standards that are involved in all this. Then what counts as knowledge? What kind of knowledge? Are you going to adapt? Is there any room in the content for local knowledge, for adaptation, for local content? Now, the first thing I tell my students is that my grandmother was the first professor of chemistry that I met. But she's dead and she couldn't read English. She didn't go to any university, but she was a professor of chemistry. And they tell me, how do you know that? I said, because she always cooked ogbono soup with the same result all the time. She puts it in a pot, the local pot, under a constant temperature and pressure. And the chemicals are the ingredients for ogbono. And everybody sits up and they laugh, but they got the point that even in our environment, in our day-to-day things, there is science there, there is content there. So it's important for us to draw from the known before we move to the abstract on the known. So the whole business of sequencing, both in terms of a curriculum, in terms also of what we call it, of the content, the way you structure your content, the format, is also very important. One of the things I have found moving from the distance, from the face-to-face to distance, is that our content are neither modularized. I mean, the curriculum is not modularized, so there are overlaps and redundancies. So that is in itself has an extra cost. And then, of course, the courses are not properly sequenced. So you hit students who are learning by themselves with abstract courses from the very beginning. That in itself becomes a challenge. And it is an extra burden. Of course, we were talking about the inadequate integration of the content with the relevant technology. You use a mobile learning content, you put a 1 hour video for mobile learning. For God's sake, who is going to listen to that? After 15 minutes, I'm fed up. You know, so there are micro contents, and that is why you have your learning objects. Your learning objects, and so on and so forth, which was talked about yesterday. Now, we have to decolonize knowledge in our content. It's very critical. So what are the pedagogical considerations? They have to do with the learning styles, the assessment strategies. These things go into the content themselves. And then, of course, I just wanted to bring this. I didn't know which title to put. It's the format. We have a prescribed format by NUC for designing learning resources. And then we talk about things like teaching. We talk about when we're interacting, we talk about strategies for interaction, for facilitation. We'll talk about flip learning. We talk about gaming. I actually prefer flip. I always flip. But I also do gaming as a way to get people interested and for participation. But the language between didactic and conversational, I usually want to start with didactic for first new entrants and then go into conversational mode gradually because of the shock of the transfer of the change. And that's the nature of the environment we find ourselves. So if it doesn't change from the beginning, then we have a problem. But for some private secondary schools, they are already used to conversational modes of an interactivity. But for most public schools, it is still the same thing that as it was in the beginning, is now and never shall be, world without end. That was the way I was used to, and then of course you know how it goes. Now, this other thing I want to talk about is the nature and types of content. What is content? Anybody can make content. Content is everywhere. But we still look at content in terms of what we have in print in the book. It is more than that. And if you open your eyes to allow the variations and the varieties of content, you will see that the problem is not the availability of content, especially on the internet, because there are open educational resources. The issue basically is whether you want to use them and how to adapt them. These are the critical issues that. Then, of course, there is the problem of the media and modes. And I am always talking about the multimodal forms: linguistic, visual, gestural, spatial, audio. And then, of course, the textuality. You can have your text on video or whatever form, but the textuality has to do with the fact that you can have intertextuality, which is linkages, hyperlinks. You can have a hypertextuality, which you have to do with which has to do with the way you connect your information sources, the modes of information presentation. And then, of course, there are digital multimodal text. Then, of course, the non-digital ones are all there. Your collages, your zines, your comic books, your posters, your graphs, all of these are there. So, now, learn to adapt OERs. There are types of OERs, open education resources. I'm sure you are very familiar with this because NUC has trained you a lot on the OERs. These are all there. Why are we not sharing our lecture notes? I mean, if they are quality enough, why are we not sharing them? The point I'm making is that let's even begin from where we are, and then we can move from where we want to be. There are textbooks, there are reading lists, there are course assignments, there are quizzes, syllabi, and lesson plans, and so on. All of these are available. And then, of course, these are also additional materials. Now, the point about OERs is that you can reuse them, you can revise them, you can remix, which means you can do something to them, and then you can redistribute, and then you can retain them. So it's important for you to how to search for them. It's another matter, and then where to find them, and which ones are and then, of course, there are copyright issues that you have to pay attention to. Now, the model that I like for instructional design is what is called the ADIE. So you can remember it that way. There are 5 steps which have to do with analysis and design, development, implementation, and evaluation. I'm not going to focus on the last 2 so that I can save some time. I'll look at analysis and now you have to look at the components required in the design you need to. The good thing for us basically is that the CC-MAS, the core curriculum minimum academic standards, has done some of that for you. So you don't really need to go and start. It has made an assumption for you, has created a generic document for you. You can now use that document and perfect it and improve on it. So what are the learning needs? This is very important. Who are your audience? What are their characteristics? So these are the things you do when you do your analysis. You talk about your goals, your objectives, your audience, learner's context, learner's profile, length of course, delivery method. Now the other thing you need to know is that in the distance learning environment, in the online environment, you are not, the content is key. The instructional design is the power of the content. The content is key. So you are not you are only a facilitator when you stand in front of and you are answering questions. You are not the teacher. So stop being, you see, I mean, just stop trying to pretend that you know everything. And that's why you must refer students to different materials. In my class, once we are talking, I ask them a question, they can't answer the question. I will tell them, Google, they will say, it's your friend. They will go and search the information and I will ask somebody to read it. And then they will read it. And then somebody will go to Wikipedia. I will say, no, don't go to Wikipedia for me because I think I am still better than Wikipedia in some respect as far as linguistics is concerned. So we debate about that. So this just, then of course the design phase. You use the inputs from the analysis to outline how to reach the instructional goals. So after you have done your analysis, you want to see how you reach. So the steps are given there: program competencies, objectives mapping, courses to program competencies, and then of course one of the big problems we have is that the cost to program ratio in Nigeria is too low. And the simple reason for that is that our curriculum, our content is not modularized. Now, in a university like Ibadan, with over 100 departments, if you look at the number of programs that exist, you discover that it's nothing to talk home about. And I think that's where we need to talk to the NUC, because if distance learning is going to work, we have to work on this cost to program ratio. Now, Southern Illinois University, smaller university, has more programs running than UIY because of modules. You pick your modules from here and there. You don't have to be in a linguistics department to do computational linguistics. But here, everything is so, the analog, what we have done basically is transfer the analog curriculum, the analog environment. We have transferred it to the distance learning environment, to the online environment. And you know what is cost? That is leading to excessive costs, excessive program costs, excessive redundancies, excessive overlaps. Now, the way I beat that when I was director of distance learning, which many people did not know how I beat it that time, was that I did a lot of combined honors programs. When I discovered that we are not going to survive, we ran a lot of combined honors programs that people were able. In fact, I'm designing an academic plan now, and I'm asking that students should be allowed to roam and range. It is, and that we should come to the point where there is freedom of learning, where people can decide that I need X, Y, Z, and I need a certificate, and then you assess the competencies, and then award a certificate on the basis of what the people already know and what they can do. And I think we need to move fast. Let's not always wait until somebody has found something out in America or found something out. What pains me mostly is that some of the ideas we share at conferences that we didn't take seriously, we went 5 years down the line and we found out that people were doing it, but we're not giving credit for it. So you have to match the unit outcomes with learning activities. So one of the things is that, we talk about our students are not, they are only theory conscious, right? Now there is a new system now of, that, a lot of institutions in the US are doing with service learning now. It has always been there. Service learning is what Africans used to do when the formal school system was not there. But we need to integrate that cultural paradigm, for instance, of what you call it, apprenticeship. So you can inculcate the capacity to give back. Compassion cannot be learned on the internet. That's what the Western world has discovered, that compassion and all the whole question of service has to be learned when you give back and when you interact with people. Let me stop. I want to stop here so we can have a little bit of interaction. Thank you very much.
Edge Conference. Educate, develop, grow, empower.